I used to think that investing was hard, boring, or complicated, but I found the perfect stock investing course that showed me how to invest as a complete newbie. Now I can build wealth in the stock market and do all the things that I enjoy at the same time. Check out the Lazy Investor Stock course and get started on your wealth building journey today.
How's everyone doing? My name is David W. Williams. I'm here with Dr. G, the CEO of Steady LLC, and I'm here to ask her a few questions about some of the things that contribute to men using substances. Dr. Jones, I'm sorry, Dr. G, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you coming through. Sorry for getting your name wrong, but I really appreciate you taking the time to come through. And so
Yeah.
really quickly, I want to kind of ask you some questions about what situations can contribute to men using substances like alcohol or drugs to cope with financial stress. And so, really quickly, what do you think could contribute to men putting themselves or getting themselves or finding themselves in that particular position?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And financial stress is really a complex form of stress
Okay.
simply because there are so many things that contribute to it. It could be external expectations from a spouse or partner. It could be impending bills. It could be that you're responsible for other family members on top of that. So there are a lot of reasons that fold into why men would start utilizing substances to cope. And honestly, it's really important to pay attention to all of the stressors that are placed on men by society right now, being the breadwinner. There's the idea of the trad wife, the woman staying at home, doing things at the house while men are out kind of getting the resources financially to support the household.
Okay.
And with the economic climate the way that it is, with the stocks crashing, with tariffs being increased, there are a lot of increased risks for people to lose their jobs or to not have secure financial stability. And so those are just a few things that would contribute to starting or increasing one's substance use, specifically as it relates to men.
Okay. And so we're talking about with so many things going on in the particular economy, are some of these responses common in your experience, right? So why would men, based on your experiences, use substances and not take up maybe tennis or exercise as a way to maybe deal with a lot of these stresses?
Yeah, well, you have to remember that if money is a factor and that's a stressor,
Mhm.
then time is also a stressor. And you don't have time to be able to go and pick up a tennis class or go to the gym and work out some of this or even go to a rage room. So, alcohol can be a convenient alternative for men, especially if they are engaging in work meetings and those work meetings are at restaurants. So, one thing leads to another, and here we are a bottle deep in substances or alcohol or other substances for that matter, because there's not enough time because of all the other external demands that are placed on the person who is responsible for making sure the house is intact financially.
Okay, and so in looking at alcohol, based on your experience, do you think it's used because it's very familiar with a lot of people inside the United States where we're kind of already, maybe before we get into the stressful situation, socialized to use alcohol as a way to get relief? And so it becomes like an easy, I don't know, it almost becomes instinctive to just go to the alcohol?
Well, I wouldn't say it's instinctive. It is
Okay,
definitely socially acceptable.
okay,
Alcohol is the most socially acceptable substance next to caffeine. So, yes, it is socially acceptable, but even more than that, it is accessible. It's easily accessible. You can
okay,
get alcohol at the grocery store, you can get alcohol at the corner store, you can get alcohol at a restaurant, you can get alcohol while you're at lunch. I was at a networking event yesterday and they offered canned alcohol on the boat. And you can also be discreet about your drinking. So
mhm,
it's easily hidden by a lot of people. Whereas other substances like cannabis, you can smell it. So it's not as easy to identify if somebody's using it. Prescription pain medications are also very easily hidden, but they're not as easily accessible. So the combination of social acceptability, ease of access to alcohol, and the ability to kind of hide it all contribute to the reasons why that is the go-to or can be the go-to over other substances.
Yes, ma'am. And so really quickly, looking at some of the other substances that we talked about may not be as accessible. Based on your experience, how do people find themselves, I would say, using those substances, even though they may be more difficult to get, they may be more difficult to obtain, as opposed to alcohol? Do you see it as a transition, or maybe just a situation to where it's preference?
It's a combination of both.
Okay.
So every substance has a different impact, and there are obviously levels to the accessibility to substances. You can't just go to your doctor's office and get cocaine,
Yeah.
but you can go to your doctor's office and get Ativan, or you can get what's the word I'm looking for? You can get a benzodiazepine substance.
Okay.
So you can go to the doctor's office and get it. So there's still a barrier there. But if you say that you're experiencing some anxiety or you're experiencing some depression, it's much easier to get a substance than it is to find someone who sells cocaine to get it. So there's still, the primary is accessibility. In the context of preference, though, in some cases, people are wanting some sort of outlet, or they're looking for an alternative, and they don't really like the flavor or the after effects of alcohol. They may be more able to tolerate the after effects of another substance. They can bounce back quicker, or it doesn't impact their work as much, so they're still able to function the way that they want to. Or maybe they're able to focus more because they have a prescription medication that is intended for people who have a hard time focusing, but they get it anyway. So I still think accessibility is the primary. Preference does play a role too, but even still, in the same vein of accessibility, if your family household smokes weed and they don't really drink, then it's more accessible, and it's something that you've been around more frequently. And so that may be the alternative that you try.
Okay. And one more question in that particular area before we move on. So we're talking about like alcohol, marijuana in some parts of the country is legal. So I found out, I was visiting some people in Illinois, found out that marijuana now is legal in Illinois. I wasn't aware of that until they told me. When I was coming up, marijuana, especially because I'm from the Southeast, was very much illegal. In fact, it still is in a lot of parts of the Southeast. Do you find in your experience that the substance use can come from the idea that, well, it's acceptable to not use this particular drug? Where if I'm doing cocaine or Percocets, which is real big in the southwest part of Atlanta, real big in Atlanta in general. I'm sorry. If I'm doing something like Percocets, it's not as acceptable if I'm in an environment to where everybody's telling me, well, now it's legal to smoke marijuana, or it's always been pretty much acceptable to be a drinker.
Right.
So,
right.
But you can also find yourself in a situation, because it's so acceptable, you may not realize how much you're starting to use it.
Yeah, it's a chicken or egg question, to be honest, because social acceptability is driven by people's comfort and dismantling of stigma around substances. But people's comfort and dismantling of stigma then drives the societal acceptance. So you have songs about substances all the time, whether it be alcohol, medication, prescription medication, non-prescription medication. There are several songs that promote the use of substances and make them okay and destigmatize them. But also, humans don't like getting rid of or banning something that they like to indulge in. So at one point in time, alcohol was illegal, but America was like, nah, we want to keep that. We want that to remain a part of our culture. So even though it's one of the largest, most deadliest substances in the world, even though we know the negative impacts and effects of it, people still use it, and there is an addictive component to it. These substances do release endorphins in your brain, dopamine in your brain, pleasure neurons, that make it more likely for you to engage in that substance more frequently. And the more frequently you use the substance, the less effect it has after your body becomes sensitized to it. So then you use more. So it's a combination of kind of social acceptability, the biomedical components that your brain becomes more your brain desires it more, as well as the destigmatized nature of a lot of substances that people think are okay to use.
And then, so from your experience, when a man starts using these particular substances, how do you see it impacting his friends and family?
Yeah, that's a really hard question.
Okay.
It really depends on the situation.
Okay.
It depends on the amount of support that the man has, because a lot of times men who I see who have substance use conditions, they don't have support, or they're the ones who are responsible for being everything to everyone else in the context of financial stability. And there's not really space for them to increase their emotional awareness or emotional vulnerability. On the other side, there are men who have that emotional support, but they are not going to use it because of the stigma behind specifically Black and Latino men to be more masculine and not show emotion. That's transitioning now with Gen Alpha. But it's been something that's so deeply ingrained in our culture that men are not allowed to express their feelings, that, you know, their emotions end up turning into anger over other things. And the substance just exacerbates that. It's an outlet for them.
I understand that. I mean, and I understand where you're coming from with that particular perspective, because from my experience, you do get socialized a lot as a young man that you're not supposed to express yourself in certain ways. Really, the only acceptable emotion is going to be anger, and so then that can be multiplied once you start using substances.
Exactly.
Right. So I agree with you 100% there. So I'm happy that people are able to kind of make a change to where they can't communicate what's going on with them, as opposed to letting things build up and then maybe coming out the wrong way, or then maybe moving towards substances.
Yeah.
So if a person's having these kind of issues where dealing with the financial stress, and they may feel like a solution would be maybe to kind of use substances to try to cope, or to try to figure out how to deal with this particular situation, what do you think they should do as opposed to maybe start looking at substances?
Yeah, I think the first thing to do is assess your situation. How much are you working? How responsible are you for your finances? What does that look like practically? Do you have a partner who can help you in that area, or is it your sole responsibility? If it is, then communicate to the people around you where you need support and where you need help. So simple things could be, hey, can you take the car in to get serviced? Or, hey, can you make a meal that I can put in the freezer for the week so that I don't have to think about dinner? Or, hey, can you take on this responsibility for me so that I can go take a break? I can go golfing or something like that. If you have additional resources, if the financial stress is not so much that you don't have the money, but that you are using it for different things, pivot that income, put it towards the gardener, put it towards the housekeeper, so that you can take some of that mental load off. Also, and those are practical things that you can do with the money that you already have. If you're experiencing financial stress and there's more to it, like, for example, you recently had a loss in your family, or an elder is ill and you're taking care of them, or you have a new baby in the house or something like that, any major life transition, if you have the resources and capacity to, then therapy would be great. There are a lot of insurance providers that cover therapy, and it gives you someone who is your person to talk to, neutral party. You say what you need to say, you get it off your chest, and you start fresh. And that also gives you tools, like psychological, practical tools to use in your day-to-day when you're feeling stressed out and you can't necessarily get out and take a mental health day at work. Additionally, chunking your days to 4 hours so that you can take time to rest, so that you can take time to go outside, so that you can take time to play golf or exercise or go for a jog or whatever the case may be. Doing things that bring you joy and fulfillment, that you can do with your family, that you can do with others, or that you can do for yourself. So kind of filling those 3 buckets: friends, family, self, doing things with them. Do not isolate. That's one of the easiest ways to fall into an addiction quickly. But do not isolate. Surround yourself with people who are safe and who you trust.
Okay. And I want to ask you a question really quick. You talk about the therapy piece. If a person seeking out therapy, should they have certain expectations of the therapy, or should they just go ahead and do the therapy and kind of see how it plays out?
If whatever you're paying for, you have expectations of, right? You go to a restaurant, you expect the food to be good. You go to the grocery store, you expect what you get to be sealed properly. You go to a barber and you expect them to line you up the way that you ask them to. There's no different for a therapist. You are entitled to have expectations of what the therapy can be for you, but your responsibility is to communicate those expectations to your provider. Because the reality is, it may not be a good fit. If you need somebody to be direct with you and this therapist says, you know what, that's not my approach, no harm, no foul, move on, find somebody else. If you need somebody to just listen, if you need somebody to give you practical tools and resources and homework, if you need someone who understands your specific dynamic, ask for those things, because the therapist is not a mind reader. People think that, but the therapists don't know what you're coming in with. They don't know what you need. They can assess, but it's so much more effective if you share what your needs and your goals are with the therapist up front and pivot if it's not a good fit.
Okay. So Dr. G, I don't want to hold you too long. I know you're very busy, so I really appreciate you coming through. Thank you for the conversation. And so I hope everybody got a lot of value from it. Hit me up in the comments. David W. Williams, talk to you later.